What is consciousness? Consciousness is the sum total of all of your experience right now. Consciousness is the knowing of the one who is aware of all experience, but it's also all of the experience, and it is when we don't make a distinction between the experience and who or what it is that's experiencing it. So it's a very disengaged way of experiencing the thought or knowing space, such that there's not even the first movement of polarity, of a sense of being a thinker, a doer, the one who's wondering about how to do practice, how to do inquiry. Self-inquiry is sort of a trick that you play on your own outgrowth of consciousness that feels like you. The reason I say it's a trick is that outgrowth that feels like you inside consciousness, that feels like the one that's navigating its own life, making choices, managing your experiences, trying to make everything more comfortable or more the way you need it in life or think you need it. That outgrowth itself is based on a fundamental assumption. The assumption is that what I take myself to be at any given moment is something discrete, apart from other experiences, people, and objects, and real in a way that it needs to be defended or fed or preserved. That's not what you are. That is a sort of outgrowth of the capacity to feel beingness and knowingness as a base experience. So all of the ways you've learned to think about yourself, to think about doing, having, pushing away, pulling closer, are a sort of hall of mirrors, reflections from earlier times in your life, times when you were navigating the fundamental fears of being human, the fear of abandonment, the fear of loss of validation, the fear of not being loved, heard, seen, etc. So instead of going to the heart or source of those fears and investigating the truth of separation or the experience of separation, we unknowingly created a world that seems to just bypass or overlook those primal fears, those primal misunderstandings. And that's the outgrowth I'm talking about. It's what feels like you. It's what feels like you when you're making decisions. It's what feels like you when you're making your life more comfortable or the way you seem to need it. It's the part of you that feels like it's endlessly struggling to one degree or another with your experience. That's the outgrowth. That's the formed self inside consciousness. But the self with a big S, or the undifferentiated self nature, the root of the I am sense, is not that outgrowth. It's the whole container, but container's not really a good word for it. It's the knowingness that allows this dualistic experience of self and other, self and world, self and problems, self and solution to exist at all. So it's overlooked all the time but it's always there. And when we instinctually find ourselves as that, in and as that, we see that the outgrowth is nothing but a series of thoughts. And it just looks very different. What's experienced immediately is deep peace. What's let go of, in a sense, is everything. But this doesn't mean we recoil and hide from life. What we let go of is the barrier between ourselves and life. So what we let go of is identifying with that internal outgrowth that feels like the identified self. The self that's bound to its own perceptions of what's out there in a dualistic way, in an uncomfortable way. So the shift, if it could be called that, or the dissolution, or who knows what it is, the lens just shifts the right way, apparently. And there's a clear knowing, but it's also a remembering. However, it's not a memory-based remembering. It's a very profound and fundamental experience of stillness, of equanimity, of realizing that everything is fundamentally okay before we started to perceive it as not okay, and then created an internal world, an internal self to try to make it okay, which has led to endless seeking. So, again, the spell is broken, and then seeking is seen to be nothing more than what it actually is, which is a thought. Coming and going. Oh, I need that. I need this. This person may not like me. What can I do about it? I have self-doubt. What do I do about that? Thoughts. These are just thoughts. But when this shift has occurred, the ratio of what pulls attention, what feels heavy, is flipped on its head. Suddenly those thoughts are incredibly light. They're meaningless, ultimately. And what you are, or what is, what's what, this pure, undifferentiated, unbound knowingness, is rest, home, peace. With this, there's typically a significant amount of emotional baggage and heaviness that's dissipated. Seems to just go into oblivion. And a heaviness that we had been carrying around and not realizing, as if we've been carrying a backpack and every few weeks someone put another few grains of sand into the backpack throughout our life, and we never realized how heavy it's gotten, is suddenly removed. It's even stranger than that. It's not that it's removed, it's just clear that it has never been there, ever. Suffering, struggle is not a thing. It's not what we thought it was. It's an illusion of mirrors reflecting one another in a certain way. And then our response to those reflections, believing them, pushing, pulling, struggling, thinking we needed to rectify some situation. It seemed clearly that that's what suffering was. It was an experience, but it's not substantial. It has no source of substance. It's just a optical illusion in a sense. Now, of course, the shift in identity is necessary to actually know this instinctually. You can't just bypass it and want to believe that because it makes you feel good, because you'll only be fooling yourself. But this incredible dropping away of the weight, burden, struggle is quite palpable, very obvious. So I don't really have a specific goal or point of this video other than just to allow you to feel into it, what I'm saying, just into it. It's just a feel thing. there's techniques, there's practices, there's inquiries, but honestly, sometimes it's just a surrender, really. So if you can feel into this, great. If not, don't solidify it. Just listen, feel, see if something clicks. If not, no big deal.